Greetings! Here we have a Nintendo Playchoice-10 Arcade cabinet. This was released in the mid-1980s, around the same, a little bit after the Nintendo Entertainment System was released. And what this does is you can install up to 10 games into it, and the player can choose what they want to play. But instead of putting in a coin and getting a game, you can put in as many coins as you want, and what you do is it gives you time to play. These are standard NES games. They're electrically a little bit different. And the colors are a little bit different than the NES games, but it gave you a choice of games, and Nintendo also used this to preview to the public new games that they were about to release for the NES. Now this cabinet works. It plays. It has 10 games in it, but the monitor is a little bit worn, I should say. And what we're going to do today is get out the monitor and recap it, because I think that most, if not all, of the symptoms we're seeing are caused by old capacitors. So actually it doesn't look too bad, but the first problem is that the screen is blooming. Let me explain. So if I hit a button to go into a game, the screen is usually really bright when you first enter the game, but then it kind of calms down after a while, and that's called blooming and is usually caused by bad caps, as you may have guessed. So if you look at the top of the game, you see how there's distortion in the upper few pixels of the screen fold over. That's also caused by capacitors, because it's taking a while for it to recover after a vertical blank. And let's see, if it does it again, you can see the blooming pretty clearly when it blanks the screen and gets back to the beginning. Of course, now it's making us wait, but there you go. That was pretty clear. That wasn't the camera so much as it was the actual monitor getting really bright when it put up the new screen. There you could kind of see it. But while we're at it, we go back to the main screen. This shows you what games are available. And there's a counter that I guess shows you the number of seconds you have available. And when you set it into free play, it shows all 9s, and it never counts down when you're starting to play. But let's go through the recapping procedure and see if that fixes things. Here's a monitor. It's a Wells Gardner K7000 series, low-res RGB color. And there's the cage housing the PCB. And it's an isolation transformer and a power supply down there. And next to it is an audio amplifier. And that's about it. But it looks like probably going to be easier to take this out through the front. Because all I got to do here is remove 4 bolts and pull it out the front, I think. But yeah, let me ponder the problem and then we'll continue. It came out through the front. It was rather easy. You could take out the 4 bolts that held it in place, but gravity, it's slightly tilted, the frame is slightly tilted, so gravity held it in place, and then you just lift it out and carefully remove it and put it on your workbench. Now for safety. This is a CRT, and that's the CRT chassis, the driver board, and that's the neck board. CRT is a large capacitor that will retain many thousands of volts even after it's turned off, i.e. power is removed to it. You've heard that before. If you touch, that's the high voltage wire going there. If you touch a metal part of the CRT anode, which that is, and ground your another part of your body, you will get a shock. The results of which can be pain, disfigurement, or death. Even though a lot of people say, nah, that's not true, that's bunk. It's high voltage, but it's very low current, and since it's not powered, you'll just get a shock. Be that as it may, if you touch the wrong parts of a charged CRT, it'll be pretty painful at a minimum. So think about that before you put your fingers into one of these. Okay, it's the next day. Thought I'd show you the cavity where the monitor came from. And can't really see any of that, but there you go. Kind of. Those are the metal brackets that the monitor is cradled in. So it's actually pretty easy to remove it because you don't need a third arm to hold the monitor in place while you're removing the screws. And once it's freed, you just got to lift it out carefully. One other thing I found was, I guess I was wrong about the date of this, because this clearly says copyright 1990, Nintendo of America. I said middle, 1980s. And when I was looking at the monitor yesterday, it's built February 21st, 1991, first shift. So I guess this was built, it says manufactured in May 1991. So actually this particular machine was built in the middle of 1991. So let's look at the proper way to discharge a CRT. What we need is we need a cattle prod, a high voltage probe that kind of looks like this. And what this does is it hooks up to a multimeter and divides the voltage it reads by a factor of 1,000. So if your multimeter says 1 volt, that means there's 1 kilovolt being measured. So let's make sure this thing doesn't fall down. The high voltage probe gets connected to the multimeter, obviously, and the ground strap will get connected to the frame of the monitor. Let's see. Can you see that? Up here somewhere. And then what we do is we slide the tip of it under the anode cup and see what the voltage says. So it's been since last night, so this sat here for about, what, 15-20 hours, because I had to get my beauty sleep first, but off we go. And you should probably also wear safety goggles in case something decides to blow up. But so we have to gently slide it under the cup till we hit the contacts. Well, looks like this thing discharged itself overnight. Now, if you measure this right after it was powered up, you're going to read a reading around 20 volts, which means there's 20 kilovolts sitting on it. Now, if you do this after it was powered up recently, it's not enough to just hold the high voltage probe here. And I didn't mention, I mean, if there is voltage on it, the high voltage probe will non-violently discharge the tube. Non-violently meaning that you're not directly grounding the anode to but rather doing it through a large value resistor, so it'll gradually drop. But this is gone. But what I was getting at is if you do this after the tube was in use, these tubes have the nasty habit of self-recharging. So you can get it down to zero, and before you know it, it can go up to a couple hundred volts again. So check it again before trying to remove the anode cup. So it took a bit of finagling. You have to press this part together, and there's two hooks that go to into the tube. And so now the tube is discharged and disconnected from the chassis. So now what we do is we remove all of the wires that hold the chassis to the monitor and take out the chassis. So first we want to do an inspection of the flyback. See, look for any cracks in the case, any signs of damage. It looks really clean, and we can also see part of it through here. We can also see two capacitors hiding here, and oh well, you can't see that, but there's capacitors hiding in that cage. There's one, and then there's a smaller one behind it. Those are going to be fun to get out and put back in, but the very first thing I'm going to do is mark all of the existing capacitors so that I know which ones I have removed and replaced. Here's the main filter cap, and just all of the other stuff will get marked. And then what we're going to do is we're going to match up all the capacitors, make sure that we have replacements for them. And I like to do them one by one. There's just too much potential for mixing things up if you take out all of them or a bunch of them. So yeah, I'll take out each one, replace it, solder it in place. And another thing to do is when you're taking out each capacitor, make sure that the board clearly marks the polarity. And if not, take a marker and mark the polarity of the capacitor so you don't put it in the wrong way, and then when you turn on the monitor, the capacitor in question will blow up. Maybe not immediately, but you put electrolytics in the wrong way and they will blow up. Alright, they're all marked. You can even see one of them that's hiding back here, poking through. So now, I won't bore you with the details, but I'm going to desolder them one by one and put in new capacitors in their place. Okay, here are the retiring capacitors. And of course, here's the refreshed board, new capacitors in it. Now there is one more thing, well, actually two more things that we should do before putting this back, and that is observe the back of the board and make sure that you have cut off all excess leads of anything you've replaced. I know it sounds like it's a no-brainer, but it does happen that you forget one of the leads and then it shorts something and all of your work was for naught. Second thing is give it some IPA or toothpaste and clean the back of the board. If there's like any bits and pieces when you desoldered something, if a bit of the desoldered stuff fell back, of the desoldered solder fell back on the border, so this will help get rid of it, and it'll get rid of some of the flux too that came out of the new solder. So we are ready to put the board back in. Okay, I put the monitor back in, and no, I have not tested it. Maybe it's false bravado, but everything's in place, all the wires connected, everything triple checked, and we are going to hit the power switch. 3, 2, 1, go. No smoke. No untoward sounds. And we have a pretty nice looking screen. Just the angle a little bit. So there's our result. It looks more brilliant. The camera is muting it a little bit, but there's no distortion on top. It's very nice and sharp. So now what we do, we get to select the game. I don't know, Super Mario Brothers 2. Okay, so it still looks, look, it had like a bit of the blooming effect, but since we replaced all of the capacitors, that's just the way it is, I guess. So here it didn't do it. Okay. That looks pretty nice. there you have it. I would say it was a success. Mostly a success, but the screen looks really nice. Since we determined it was made in 1990 or 91, we're looking at a 33-year-old CRT and hardware, and I think that's pretty good. Since it's not going to be doing any heavy duty while in my possession, it'll probably outlast me. But that's great. Somebody else can enjoy it then. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified. And we'll see you next time.